Check podcasts.
The Bread and Butter Collective is a collection of hospitality professionals working together to help strengthen our industry to build strong culture, community, and sustainability.
I'm Calen McNeil.
And I'm Sam Jones. And this is the Bread and Butter Podcast.
Welcome to the Bread and Butter Podcast. How are you, Sam?
Great. How are you doing, Calen?
Good.
Feels like we've been doing this for a while.
Yeah,
now
we
today.
usually just start talking. That's the one beauty about us and you in particular. Like through this podcast, you've become one of my closest friends.
Aw.
And when we sit and talk, we're talking just as two people, right? And I think a lot of the times we're not like overly prepared. You know, sometimes we don't know really what we're going to talk about. But I think that's the purity of what we're doing. And, you know, for me, I appreciate it because it's almost like it's a very cathartic experience.
Mm-hmm.
Every Wednesday we get in. And, you know, obviously when we have guests, then we talk about that. But even in those cases, we
Or
still...
as I like to call them, third wheels
Third
in
wheels.
our relationship.
Exactly. Like, so awkward sometimes. It's
I
like you're
know.
getting in the way of our relationship. But it's cool. Like, it's a very rewarding experience. And regardless of who's listening or who's participating or even what we say, because, you know, there's things sometimes we say things controversial. And when we're in business, like having a controversial opinion is better to be neutral, I would say, if
It's
you own your
scary.
business.
Yeah. I've always been non-political in my business. I don't do holidays. I don't do politics in my business.
Yeah.
Outside my business, I've been political since I can remember.
Radical even.
Even I had an anarchist shirt forever.
Yes.
I still wish I had that.
I mean,
I don't know if I believe in anarchy anymore, but I don't not believe in all of it.
Well, it's kind of like, you know, if they're for it, I'm against it, you know, which I think ends up creating that back and forth that creates better ideas, you know.
If
like
the other person's willing to listen and respond,
exactly.
like we do, right?
Exactly. Like we don't always agree on topics. You know, you have knowledge that I don't have. I have knowledge that you don't have. But
So much.
Even when we disagree, we'll always circle back in the end and remember the purpose of what we're doing. This is dialoguing. This is sharing ideas. This is hopefully informing because, you know, obviously there'll be people out there that agree with us or agree with one of us or agree with the topic. And there'll be a bunch of people that don't.
Yeah.
And I think our role in this is to speak our truth. And, you know, we do a little bit of research and we have knowledge and experience that we've incorporated over our lives. So, you know, if people can relate to some of the stuff that we're talking about, but just the format of having a debate that doesn't require yelling.
Well, it doesn't get heated, right? And it's not. Well, I think we're
passionate,
unique in our perspectives in that we understand our positions in the topic without thinking that is part of who we are. Like, just because I believe in something and I take a stand on something, that's not part of me. It's just something that I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because I believe in that. It doesn't mean that I take that on as part of my personality or part of who I am, and then I don't feel like I need to defend it.
Yeah.
Right? And so many people, I think, they see an issue because that's all we see on social media, just issues and comments.
Yeah.
And people really take on those issues personally these days, it feels like.
Well, it becomes, and this is where, you know, the idea that politics, religion need to be separate. Like anytime politics becomes religion, that is a problem because you're then making it way more about the topic, the subject. Then it becomes a zero sum.
Sure.
Where we've talked about zero sum in game theory and where there's winners and losers. And the reality of it is like in most cases, there's like a very small degree of separation between one person's ultimate goal and idea and the other person's.
Yeah.
And then, but you can inflame it and create this big wedge where you think it's life and death. And if this happens, the world's going to end. And everything is that level now. Everything. It doesn't matter what it is. You can say one thing is like, if somebody with a red hat says it, it's the end of the world. If somebody with a blue hat says that, oh my God, it's going to change and communism and socialism and all this kind of, it's like, okay, what is better for people? Because generally speaking, what's better for people is how do we make their health better? How do we allow them to, have some self-actualization and being in control of what happens in their life, where they can work and they can raise a family and they can be happy and they can afford to live. And these things is what, in my mind, makes humanity humanity.
Yeah, I want to see all people be able to develop into the person they want to develop into
100%.
without restriction.
Yes, and if somebody believes in one God versus the other God or anything else, or has, let's trickle down economics. I believe the rich should just create the jobs and it'll benefit the people, or it needs to be a people movement where, grassroots up. Like, you can have those different ideas and stuff. I mean, I know what is right. But you should be able you should be able to have freedom to have all those thoughts and patterns, as long as you're not dictating to somebody else. And this is where you run into problems when your religion then becomes the politics. Then all of a sudden now you're taking control of other people's decisions and you're applying what you believe onto other people. And this is where I think the big problem is. Like, I don't care. You can practice your religion. You can think there's a purple whatever in the sky or in the ground or wherever. It doesn't matter to me. You have the right. I'll defend their right to have their views. I don't have to agree with them. But as long as they're not putting those views onto me and forcing me that way, or restricting what I can do or say or where I can go based on it. And this is the problem.
Well, I think hit a good point there, is that people think that just because someone's expressing their opinion, they're forcing it upon everyone else.
Yeah.
But that's not the case. When people are expressing their opinion, maybe that's all they're doing, and we shouldn't think about it so personally, like, oh, you're saying black.
Well, now you're in this group of people that are doing these bad things.
Yeah, it's like, well, maybe I'm not in that group of people doing those bad things. Maybe I just said that to express myself.
Yeah.
And everyone's got the right to do that. But when we hear people express themselves, it feels like we're more apt to jump down their throats because we're taking it personally, even though it wasn't really.
Well, that's because it becomes our religion. This is where you're actually not just having a political debate or an economic debate. It goes against your core values.
Because you made it that core, though. Yeah. And I think, not you, but I think that social media has really encapsulated that idea of turning ideas into part of your core.
Yeah, your belief system.
If we didn't have social media, we wouldn't have any reference.
All of those things have always existed, and I think
through books and magazines.
Yeah, like those ideas, like this isn't new.
Oral traditions.
If you look at the Middle East stuff, like a lot of when someone is anti-Zionist, they become anti-Jewish. But Zionist is sort of a political movement. Not sort of, it is a political movement. And they've tied it into their religion. So then it becomes a part of their identity. So if you attack their political views, you now attack their religion.
Well, that's what they say, but that's not the truth of it, right?
But that
like you're not attacking their religion. They're making it so that other people see you as attacking their religion.
Because that's where they tie that in. So then all of a sudden now they can get somebody to bomb a school, or they can, target whatever they want to target in the name of their religion, because this is what was preordained by God, and it's in my Bible. And no, you want to take over a huge part of the world, and you want to influence it, and you're using religion to do it.
And you're misrepresenting their own religion.
You are. Well, they're doing a disservice because, and again, getting into the politics of it, this isn't like the Semites are Palestinians as well. So how can you be pro-Palestinian and anti-Semite? Like, it doesn't make sense. So, there's a lot of logical ideas in this, but the overreaching thing that I find most offensive is that you're basically, and people have done this forever. Like, you look at the Crusades, and all this stuff. But prior to this period, prior to World War II, there was a lot of peace in the Middle East. As much as they had, their issues or whatever, but Muslims, Christians, and Jews all lived together.
Yeah.
Even in Iran, they live together.
Iran and
You know,
Lebanon.
yeah. And because all of the religions, in the purity of their religion, every religion promotes peace and prosperity. Everyone does. Like in the large part of it. Obviously, there's extremism in everything,
of course.
but it's, like it really goes down to loving your neighbor and doing good things. When it gets weaponized for political purposes, then all of a sudden it is like, no, they're the devil and they're terrorists and they're, when you demonize people, it allows you to be able to do things, or you're allowed to grow a group of people that are willing to do things that without that they wouldn't, because humans aren't. That's not human nature. It's not human nature to do the things that is happening.
No, and in our current age, when we're talking about, we have to love our neighbors kind of first and foremost, and then spread it out from there. Like fix your own house, your neighbors, and then move on. Right?
It goes to that community piece.
Exactly.
Right?
But our communities have been shattered by being isolated from each other for a long time now, it feels like, and being further isolated from each other through, again, social media.
Yeah.
There's no individual in social media. There's no real community.
No, because there's no money in that. Like there's no money when you talk about why are these algorithms and why are these companies allowed to create these silos. And it's no different than, like, they're basically in my view, a weaponized version of society, because, political parties try to create this religion link, right? So then it's just like if you're like multi-level marketing companies do better with, recruiting religious people, because then it becomes a part of their religion and their cult, and
they're already kind of programmed
they're
accept things
exactly
as they are,
exactly
unquote, right?
And then when you get the social media companies that are allowed to profit off this, then they have the actual control of what people see, what people hear, and also how the human mind works, and what time of the day, and what do you say, and then how do you take someone from, there's people that have, were like left leaning that now are on the totally opposite of the spectrum. There is a weaponization in that propaganda to take someone from one view all the way to the other. So then they build these tribes on either side, and then the silo feeds it. And then basically then you get all that conversation, which breeds all those clicks and, the marketing dollars and, and it's out of control. And then you become so big, they have more money than countries.
Yeah.
Then what happens? It's happening right now. They're allowed to build AI centers anywhere they want, and they're bribing people, and how do you stop them? Because they're just behemoth, and the politicians who are designed to control it are out of the loop, and they're in on it.
Well, maybe social media is the new religion that shouldn't ever mix with politics.
Well, and I agree with that. And I think, it really becomes like, these are private companies.
Yeah.
So there needs to be, you got to protect the public from certain things. Like, that's the duty of the government. The reason why you have a government is to make sure there's roads, make sure we have health laws, and make sure, we have police to prevent other people from stealing stuff or creating environment. And that's why we have accountability through the court system if a chemical company poisons a neighborhood, right? All this stuff is oversight.
However,
that's how
and that's how it's ultimately meant to be.
Yeah, that's right.
But
and that's the
so
way
many
it was
cracks in the systems.
That was the way it was before all of this weaponized propaganda that happens through social media, and it's being allowed to happen. And we're all like, well, let's not have our kid on that. Let's take control.
Take your kid off of it.
Yeah, but even then, like, when they talk about this, like, banning social media for somebody under 16, I think it's a great idea. But why not legislate and mandate these companies are better actors?
Yeah.
They have
change it, like wipe it out and change it.
Yeah, like, so you can have it, but you don't allow these bad actors to get in to poison the kids' minds, or you do it in a way.
I remember when China a couple of years ago was like trying to ban social, or they control their
they control the internet,
and they still do, and how outraged people were that they would come in and like put restrictions and firewalls, and kids weren't able to access anything after like 5 o'clock in the evening or whatever it was, right?
I'm like, they're genius.
And now we're like, go Australia for banning social media for 16-year-olds. I mean, it's been a problem for a long time, and I think that the trust issue is being eroded by mishandling of so many policies over time by our governments and people that we expect to be in control. They've so disappointed people that the trust isn't there, which allows all this other stuff to come in and be able to be controlled more. So now the government has all these people who are disenfranchised. They don't believe what they hear from their own government or the opposition of the government. No one believes anything, and that's where the overlying control can come in and just like
Well, and that is
squelch us.
That's also like an authoritarian strategy, is
Sure
to just
is.
create all this. You can't believe anything.
And it's a global. I don't think
it's a global
a Trump thing or
no.
China thing. I think this is a
No.
global thing that they need to for whatever reason control how people behave, act, what we get, how much we get, how far we get, how we dream, how we dream about our future. I mean, it's all being curtailed and cut off, and
controlled.
I
Right, and
hate it.
Those are the things that that's the real issue here. Is it's just like in history, you got to look back to where things started, and a time like. This is, humanity goes in ebbs and flows. So we're in this down flow. But, looking back to where, we talk about, make America great again, make humans great again. Like, there's periods of peace and there's periods of wealth distribution, correct wealth distribution. And part of it is when it goes off tracks, when wealth concentration becomes polarized. So, ultimately over time, people are less poor than they were 50 years ago, but they're still on average. So, we've progressed in the sense that the poorest people in the world are richer than they were 50 years ago. They're still poor, but the rich, the number of billionaires and now approaching trillionaires that are out there have grown exponentially. And it's like a vacuum cleaner that sucks up. Like during COVID, that gap even grew, and you're hollow out the middle class. And the centralized wealth is such a dangerous thing, because before they would control they broke up not ExxonMobil, Standard Oil back in the day, because they grew to a point where they were now getting richer than the country itself. And they need to do that. The fact that Elon Musk is now has consolidated his company into SpaceX, and is going to be a $1.7 trillion company that only does, I think they do, I don't even know what they do in income. Maybe it's 50 to 75 billion in income, but their company valuation would be 1.7 trillion. So now his share maybe owns 30 or 40% of it. He's now a trillionaire. And what are we doing? When all the underlying fundamentals don't make sense. So now he has access to capital in ways that, and then the tax inequality. So on a dollar for dollar basis, even though he's probably only paying 1% tax or something like that, it's a lot of money. But when you look at
proportional,
no, it isn't. It's not. It's like it's like us paying taxes of $1 or $50 or $100 or something like that. How is that fair? Because though wealth begets more wealth. So 10 years from now, it's going to be 2 trillion, 3 trillion, 4 trillion. Meanwhile, who's paying for the roads and infrastructure? Because all of that stuff declines over time. So you have to build the bank. So when you build a road, you're going to rebuild it in 30 years. So who's funding that to get there? And all of a sudden, 30 years later, they don't have the money. And they're like, okay, well, we got to tax more people. So who's paying? Like all the schleps.
And when you core out the middle class like that, it's not trickling down.
No.
That money's not trickling down when you empty out the middle class. It just gets sucked up, like you're saying.
Well, and then the information warfares. And they do it soon as somebody says, well, freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is not hate speech. It's not controlling people's thoughts. It's not, setting algorithms that dictate what you see or hear, and also it's accountability. So if you're doing speech that hurts people or leads to hurting people, that is wrong. And there needs to be accountability for that. And that's what's gone, because then all of a sudden now you're anti-free speech. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, freedom of speech doesn't give you freedom of speech is basically not allowing government to control what you say or do, or you're going to be punished for what you say, right? But now you are being punished for what you say, because if you stand up for hate against hate speech, then you're attacking freedom of speech.
If you stand up against your own government, it's considered next to hate speech. I don't know if they're calling it hate speech, but they're calling it terrorist adjacent when you talk ill of your government, even in Canada.
Yeah, well, all of it is you need the government is a representative of the people, and it should be the representative of the people. And when and I think we have probably one of the more representative political sort of or government frameworks, like our system. And I'm not saying it's perfect.
No,
right? There's lots but we have multi-parties. Yeah. Right. So, you have, 4 or 5 parties that have seats.
And
you're voting
for seats are coming from different ridings.
Yeah. And all those ridings, will create the government. Right. Versus saying, okay, we're going to have, a liberal prime minister. We're going to vote for a liberal prime minister, and whatever happens in the House or all the other seats is irrelevant. We get to vote that. So that person's going to set the agenda, even if they don't have full control of the people. Then that ideology becomes very myopic to that one view, whether it's left or right or whatever. When you have representative, then you actually have to negotiate. So you don't, if you've got a minority government, which happens way more often same with England and these other parliamentary systems than it does in the States, right? Where you're left or right, and both are
they're both wing
nuts.
Yeah.
But then you also have their system underneath where, back in 1920, one, House of Representatives represented 250,000 people. Now one represents 750,000 people. Yeah. So how, when there's a diverse population, how is that representative? Like, it's like even in business when you have, okay, well, with 100 employees or 60 to 100 employees, you need an HR manager. And you need to probably have one manager for every 15 to 20 employees. So that's where you can organize and you can listen and you can function. So you need a certain level of governance and management of this in order to get things done. Like, how do you get things done? But then also, if you have a controversial idea or you get influenced by one side or the other, are you really representative of those 750,000 people? Like, does
not all of them?
No, and then you look at voter suppression, and okay, so if I'm left or right, but majority of the people that are there are actually I'm left, but I got voted in because of voter suppression. 25% or 30% of the population voted me in, but 70% have different views. Yeah. Then what are you doing? Like, how are you representing those people? And
you're not really.
No, and then when you get the companies in there. And the companies are allowed to fund, and those are things that we have pretty good roadblocks of influence. Like, there's caps on what a corporation can fund and what people in Canada. Yeah. So as much as our system isn't great and people can argue, condemn it, it's very much different than what happens south of us.
Sure.
And in other countries where
arguably better, for sure.
Well, and you think about Norway and Denmark and some European countries. And you look at, as much as the U.S. is considered a democracy, they have very authoritarian systems where there isn't a lot of idea exchange because you've got 2 choices, and most other ideas are just like anything to do with socialism or whatever. Although they have the largest socialist budget in the world in their military and their Medicaid and all that stuff. Right. So they don't view that as socialism. Or when they give companies money or grants or whatever, that's not socialism, when it actually is socialism. When you really, the socialist thing you need is healthcare. education. Those are socialist things that bring value. Water.
Clean, potable
Yes,
water.
yeah,
to
and
communities.
environmental standards, and making sure that you're not poisoning people,
Yeah.
and that corporations aren't allowed to just do whatever they want. That's the socialism that you need. They've got the other socialism, which is militarization, and that to me is like just backwards. But how do they not see? Like, how do you get through to them by the corporations, like the people, the military? Like, they're never going to allow it, because how are they going to? They're funding the politicians that dictate the rules, and when and then they look at Mondami or AOC or these, or Bernie Sanders, and you can argue all the, and that's the thing, you get gaslit on whether they're good or they're bad or whatever. But how is wanting people to get health care, a bad thing, or have food, or have safe streets, or an education, like free education and free healthcare?
Can't we do it all?
We're doing it.
I mean,
and our system's not perfect, and there's problems, but if you look at how efficient our tax dollars are relative to what happens in South of us, they're paying, when you add it all up, they're paying more for their bad service than we are.
Are they?
Yeah, their taxes, when you add their insurance costs, so plus their insurance is tied to employment. So you literally have to have a job to have insurance, but they're still having to pay, all their subsidies and their monthly stuff, as well as the corporation. So if you have a really good job, they're paying for all that stuff. But that's also being paid by so it's insurance in some aspects, but 40 million people don't have access to it. So how is that equitable? And then if you lose your job, you lose your health insurance, and you can go bankrupt, and you can't get health care. I mean, can you imagine like having an injury or like an illness that you didn't imagine, you get shot, but then you're taken, where are you taking? You can't go to the hospital because you don't have insurance. I think there's state hospitals and things like that where they have to help you, but then you end up with a bill that leaves you in bankruptcy. Your credit rating gets ruined, and then all of the social things that happen with that.
And then how healthy can you possibly be?
I mean, the smartest, healthiest societies, take care of those basic needs. The Maslow hierarchy of needs. Roof, shelter, health, and and then you're able to prosper, because then you can actually, if your kids eat, they're getting proper nutrition, then that's going to help their growth, and it's going to help their brain cells, and it's going to help their education outcomes, because they're going to be more focused in school. And then if you cover their education, those socioeconomic things don't come into play, because somebody grew up, in a underprivileged area, and perhaps their parents, were working 6 jobs, or maybe they had, mental health or drug addictions or something like that. So they're now not getting fed properly, most likely. Their priorities, they're not being parented properly, so maybe they're allowed not to go to school. Then all of a sudden they can have all the intelligence, the IQ, all of that, the work ethic, but they're just, all these barriers are in front of them.
Yeah, if you aren't able, or if you aren't in a position where you can exercise those talents, they start to go away.
Yeah, they go away, or they're just underutilized, and then you're frustrated, and you create all these other issues in your life that you're not fulfilling your potential. We need to remove all that stuff. The reason why we are, in my view, sort of a left-leaning, and it is to do with socialized healthcare, and even our education system. So we have, obviously we have free education up to university. Our university is significantly cheaper than what it is in the United States.
Yeah.
So
it's
so
still very restrictive for a lot of people.
And I think it should be free.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, if you look at countries that have free education and free, like in France, for example, you have free education, you have free university.
Yeah.
So
if you want to come to our country and go to school, you can certainly pay and help,
they also have
and help augment that.
They also have it. They have school lunches.
Yeah.
And it's non-discriminatory. Like, it's like, the rich kid and the poor kids all get lunch, and it's all baked into the system.
Yeah.
So their tax system is based on that. And, but what are their outcomes? what is their education levels? What is their productivity, for as a society, and what is the quality of life there? And arguably our quality of life here, we don't have to wear bulletproof jackets to go to school.
No.
Are there incidents of that stuff? Sure. But is it, it's like a tiny minutia as far as it is to our neighbors.
Well,
Arguably, when you look at us, we're the same people, right?
Yeah.
There's just a border. We're living in the same proximity. We have, the same imports and, similar exports, but we are very much different
well,
based on our,
because it's an artificial border. I mean,
Yeah.
of course, we're all the same.
Yeah, we're all the
And our
same.
systems are close enough that our culture is close enough.
It's close, but if you look at the outcomes, you don't go bankrupt
But
with,
we do things differently.
Yeah.
For sure.
and it's not, but you get demonized. Oh, it's socialism, it's communism, it's like gonna be the death of what, and it's like, when is giving healthcare to people ever a bad thing?
Yeah.
When is providing education for people that's affordable ever a bad thing? It isn't. And so when you're being told it is,
So
you should question that.
Here's a question: who is it bad for? Who is giving free healthcare and education to everyone bad for?
It's not bad for anybody
So why are we being told it's bad for us?
because it doesn't serve a corporate purpose.
So that's
Yeah.
why it's bad, because it doesn't serve the corporate
Well,
purpose.
and I'm sure if you're a doctor and you're working in a socialized healthcare system, you might not be able to make $2 or $3 million.
But maybe that's not why you became a doctor in a socialist healthcare system. Maybe you did it to help people.
Well, and there's a function in that. It's
Right.
like you're still going to be one of the top earners.
Yeah.
You're still going to make more than enough money to live a excellently happy life. You're like all our doctors still, if you're a specialist, you can make up to $1 million too. So, we're not stifling that, but what is the outcomes for the patients and the human condition? Because we're all humans here.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're here. We're not here to work. Like I don't think we're put in this earth to make Elon Musk rich,
No,
or Jeff Bezos, or Zuckerberg,
we're
or be
here
controlled by them.
for our experience in life. We're here
Yeah.
to experience what the world has and what it offers.
Yeah, and try to be
what
kind
we
and
each
nice.
offer to
Yeah.
each other, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're not here to progress in a way that hurts anybody else. And that's I'm not totally bashing capitalism, but capitalism only works on the backs of other people. It does not work without someone being put down.
100%. And this is where the zero sum comes in. There's
Yeah.
winners and losers.
Yeah.
And every dollar that a rich person has, it's come from a poor person. It just has.
It does, yeah.
Right? So I think, when you look at, you look at even slavery and the prosperity that was gained by not paying people money,
And
not sharing it. That all went to the top.
That continues.
Oh, it 100%
to
does.
this
The minimum
day. In fact,
wages and all this stuff. It's all like, if your business, if Jeff Bezos is a great example, because it's very well documented that he doesn't pay his people well.
Yeah.
So he might pay the executives well and all that stuff, but the people that are working in the distribution centers and all this stuff often have to have multiple jobs. So you're getting your money, your yacht you're buying is on the backs of those people.
Yeah.
This is a direct line. This isn't like a guess. It isn't like, oh, well, some people fall through the cracks. It's like, no, you've built your whole business model on that. And it's one thing to do things efficiently when you're starting out. Like, so yeah, maybe you can't afford, to pay everybody great, but that company is spitting off billions and billions of dollars. The banks are another good example, even in Canada. So banks make billions of dollars every quarter.
Yeah.
Yet now a banker is not a profession. Like, maybe the manager of the bank is, but even then, the tellers are making minimum wage or a little bit above now.
Yeah, that's not a profession.
Where it was
they
like,
can't even count money back yet.
Yeah. So, and then it's all flowing to their shareholders. And then, in a capitalist society, it's like, well, you can't control that. And like, no, you can't. You cannot, then you have to tax them. Because if you don't have the moral clarity to understand that you need to pay people well, then the government needs to step in and say, okay, well, we need to tax you more so that we can then use that money to give healthcare and give education, build roads, and do the stuff that you're not willing to do. And I think there's a system that could be hybrid out of it, where if the corporation does X, Y, and Z. Like you look at B Corps. Like B Corps are a corporation that's basically built to do good things. So they have a social mandate. They have a fair wage mandate. They have a health mandate. They have a for-profit mandate as well.
Yeah.
But it's all there. So if a company's a B Corp, you can be taxed at this rate because you're doing those things. Right. So you're providing social benefit. You're paying your people well so they can afford to live and live and work in the communities they want to. Right. So in Victoria, like it's not everybody's right to live in every city just because it's a great city. If you're fortunate enough to be there, great. But if you have a business that, like I think our business is a great example. If you can't afford to live in the community that the business is in, there's a problem. So you need to be able to charge what you need to charge in order for you to be able to afford to live in the city and pay the people enough to work there. Like if somebody has to be bussed in, and you look at these communities where people are bussed in to work because they can't afford to live there, and you're not paying them enough to live there. That's to me is wrong. Like I just think it's backwards.
Well, look at the example of North Saanich, even that they have the big Amazon hub there, right?
Yeah.
They built this huge hub on land that could be used for anything else.
Yeah.
I guess, where people who come to retire in that community buy all this beautiful land, say you can't build any more houses here.
Yeah.
We've got our property. No one else.
Yeah, gatekeeping.
But when Amazon comes in, where are those employees coming from? They're not coming from North Saanich.
No.
They're not coming from Sydney.
No.
They're coming. They have to travel to get there because they can't afford to live in that community because it's being made so expensive by retirees, people with old money coming and buying up all the land, all the property, and then gatekeeping that, like you're saying, against anyone else, including the next generation who can't afford to buy the houses there. That's a form of discrimination against a class of people that, I don't know, it's just...
Well, and it ends up coming down to taxation. So either, like the freedom would be to allow them to build their business model that gives back, right? And you're giving back by either paying above market wages or enough wages so that they can afford to live there. Like
they contribute to the highway system to make it more efficient.
Yeah, or
so that they're
building the infrastructure. They're paying for the energy they need to use, right? You look at these AI centers, like it's really, okay.
Or are they being subsidized?
It
for
is.
The energy that they use?
It ultimately is being subsidized if they're allowed to take too much of it, so that it is detrimental to the citizens there. So if they're using up all the water, so now we're having to, and it's like, well, this water, we don't have enough water, so let's build, maybe a like we're gonna have to get into desalination too, just like they do in the Middle East, because Canada's fortunate that we have a ton of water, but if you keep putting up data centers, you're not gonna have a ton of water.
And if we still let companies like Nestle come in and buy up our aquifers for $1 for 100 years, which has been going on for decades now.
And they justify it because they're going to create all these jobs, but they're jobs they're not paying.
Someone opens a spigot and closes the spigot. That's one job.
No.
For the AI centers. I'm like,
the whole thing now is dystopian because they're going to be using our resources to eliminate our jobs. And I think it's hard not to. I'm touching documents that I was able to quickly get together with AI's help. There's many great uses for AI that can enhance and complement. And I believe,
as long as you can trust it.
Well, sure, and then you have to vet it. And, just removing the trust component, but just go to the function of it. Like the idea that it's trustworthy, the idea that the information you're getting is accurate and not controlled by other people this is not where we're going. We're going to an area just like social media where they're going to tell you what they want you to hear, and it's going to be filtered out. And it already is to some degree, and that's why you have to double, triple check it. But just in the purity of the function of AI, it's hard to argue that it wouldn't be a benefit to humanity with respect to medical, and there's lots of AI purposes
for information gathering and organizing information and finding out gems that are in there that we might overlook.
There's going to be jobs that are going to be displaced because of it, but without proper controls, you can easily see how it just completely runs away. And even when you're looking at the amount of energy they take, so if you want an AI thing, you need to build a nuclear reactor that takes 10 years.
Much.
That's going to power everything, and it's clean. Yeah. So you're going to use clean nuclear, and that's what you're going to do. You want a data center, you have to power it yourself.
Yeah, you got to fork out the $1 billion and build one.
You put solar panels and wind things on the property, whatever. You power it yourself. There is zero expectation, because that is a way of you're basically giving tax. Either there's a tax. You can give them grants. You can give them tax incentives to come and build, so that you're gonna have all these people working.
How many people work at
No, but forget about the AI. I'm just talking about the interaction between government and business.
Sure.
Right? So there's logical tax reasons to give tax incentives to business. And there are, as long as the social benefit is better than what you're giving. So, but the taxes have to come back. So the idea is that whatever they build, the wealth that they build will be taxed. So that will replace the money that the government's giving grants to start up. Right. So these are startup incentives typically. So that I don't necessarily have an issue with, as long as it's balanced. But when you give access to, even if they're paying for the water or whatever, they're sucking it and using it. That is a intangible benefit to that company that is a detriment to everyone else, because all of their bills go up. So they're subsidizing it
and charge us for the product as well.
Exactly. And then you're paying for it again. Yeah. And then how is that fair, and how is that equitable? And why is our government allowing that to happen? And thankfully, citizens are rising up and saying no to this stuff. But why? Like, if you want a data center, no problem. You invest in the energy that's going to be required, and it's got to be clean energy, right? Or you're going to use the per square footage of what your tax dollars pay. You know what I mean? Like, there's a formula where you can say you can use this much energy from the system, right? The grid or the water or whatever, based on what you're doing,
what your square footage. And,
yeah. So it's equalized, so that if I want to open a restaurant, the data center is using the same per square footage that I'm using. So that should be an equitable thing. Whereas that's not the case. These data centers are being put in. A lot of it is done by bribing the politicians to pass it, because the citizens don't want it. So they're screaming about it. And then the outcome, we're all going to have to deal with the outcome after. When you can just put the safeguards in. If you want to do it, you got to invest in a $50 or a $2 billion nuclear reactor. That's going to enough. And then guess what? Now you can sell back some of that power to the community around you, because maybe it'll do 3,000 homes on top of that. Right?
Yeah.
So then there's a benefit, right? And then, without getting into the argument of whether nuke's good or bad or whatever.
I was going to say, right? But that does raise issue.
Exactly. But there is.
You don't want a nuclear power plant downtown Vancouver next year, new AI.
Well, now
center, right?
The technology's got to the point where it is safe. So this is the thing. Like, we have solved, we've solved clean energy. We solved it a long time ago. But it's
we've
the appetite.
The risk enough to say that it's safe.
But it's expensive.
Safer.
It's expensive. It still takes a lot of money to do it. So the payback, might be 100 years, right? But guess what? If you want to do that, then do it.
I think we got better options coming.
I hope so.
And maybe some of that is going to be brought to us by calculations done by AI.
Yeah.
Ironically enough.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's a really hard topic, the AI one, because
I read this book. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, you can see all the good it can do.
Yeah.
Like to tie it into something we were going to talk about today, you can tie it into the human rights that everyone should be able to access freely.
Yeah.
You can see the good, the benefits of it. What you don't see in that is all the negative stuff and all the humanity, because not everyone's out for the same purpose.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? And so you got such a great concept, like AI can solve healthcare issues, energy issues, why we're even here issues, maybe, who knows. But at the same time, it could also wipe us out in a decade.
Yeah.
We could all be done. Um, and I think that to solve the problems we're in, we're always looking up. Like to go ahead, we look up. Like we just need to pay our employees more.
Yeah.
We just need to do more to the community. We just need to all those things. We need to do more, more, more. Well, maybe that's the wrong approach because we're never going to get there trying to scramble to the top. Maybe we change our priorities. Maybe we feel we need to pay our employees more because things cost too much. Well, why are they costing so much? And maybe we need to look at that end of things. Like, why are corporations in this capitalist world we live in, because whether you're in communist China or capitalist pig America, they're all capitalists.
Yeah.
They're all out to make money.
Yeah.
And that's what capitalism is, right?
Yeah.
So maybe we need to look at the root of that and just change our priorities. I mean, that's a utopic idea for sure, because you can't change everyone's ideals at the same time to get there, I don't think. But wouldn't that be a better way to look at the problems as opposed to keep building and building till we solve the problems? Well, we just build more infrastructure, more problems get built into into that infrastructure. What if we took out some of that infrastructure and took out some of what we think we need? Like, we need money, we need growth. Maybe we don't need to grow.
That's the whole system, because everything's built on, these companies, all these major companies you look at are very profitable, but yet every year they need to make more profit because they want to return more profit to a certain group of people that have the money to invest in it. And it just is like, it's warped because then they're always cutting. It's one thing, like we look at our businesses, like we're on a shoestring margin. So literally, if we aren't trying to advance, but we're moving the needle by 1%, 2%. We're basically moving the needle to effectively break even and pay our wages. So it's not like we're building, even if you have 5, 6, 10 restaurants, you're still kind of like, okay, I can make, a decent living for a few people here, but you're basically making cuts and trying to purchase better just to survive. Where these companies are making billions of dollars and they want to make trillions of dollars. It just seems backwards. And then they're firing CEOs and they're cutting people, even though they can still make a lot of money, but keeping these people employed, which provides way better benefit to communities and humanity as a whole. And now we're creating systems that are going to eliminate employees and eliminate needs for humans. And it's like, okay, well, if you do that, and then so a great way to do it is, okay, well, through taxation, we're now going to provide basic income for everybody, so that that's inflationary to some degree as well, but you can literally guarantee that you're going to provide food for your family, guaranteed, and it's done through taxation. So if you're going to do all this stuff, guess what? We're going to take a chunk of it, and we're going to build a system underneath it that provides healthcare, food security, education, which will then, create leaders of the future and healthy workers, to work. But everybody's going to get basic income. And then somebody's like, I'm not paying for something. I'm like, well, insurance is that way. Yeah. So insurance works that way. Anyway. Everybody is subsidizing somebody else. And at the end of the day, it's such a small percentage of people that, do criminal behavior or take advantage of systems. Yeah. Like, that's a baseline in there. Like, we're not creating more people to not work, right? Because all you're doing is enhancing it. Because people that are going to be, they're self-starters. There's guys that want to do. You're going to be helping everybody because everybody would get the basic income.
So if you had a universal basic income for the individual, does that work? Would that work if you did not do the same thing for corporations, have a basic income for corporations or a cap?
No, you would never. Corporations would be funding it. So corporations wouldn't get an income, a basic income. Individuals get a basic income.
Maybe a cap to the corporate income, Like say Apple.
ability to
like
earn?
Apple can't make more than $100 billion in a year. Or
well,
something.
they do wealth taxes. Like basically it's a
Yeah, but they
progressive
don't
tax.
pay them. But
No. But the problem with it is back in the 50s and 60s, they did.
Mm-hmm.
So they basically taxed anything over, say, everything over $1 million at 90%.
Right.
So progressively, you can make the first 500 at 20% or 15% or 10%, and then the next blah, blah, blah. So it goes up. So it's not like you're taxing from $1. You're taxing from $1 million at 90%. So if you make 1.1 million, so there's arguably a disincentive to make more money because you're paying more tax, but it's preventing this escalation of wealth, which then
that's kind of what I'm just talking about.
Yeah.
If you were that
when society was the
hamstring-
best, when everything was great, when you had a middle class, when it was affordable for someone to buy a house, you could have a single income earner and afford to cover all your bills. That's what you had. Is you had a progressive tax system.
Yeah.
Then
and of course, when you do say that, you aren't including everyone, because there's always going to be the marginalized who were never part of the system, even in the 50s.
No, but
that couldn't.
sure,
Right.
But you're talking about it as it applies to introducing a basic income system, where right now we have a social safety net in our country, so there's a cost per individual that everybody pays either through taxes or whatever. So we have unemployment system, we have a welfare system, we have healthcare, which is a little bit different, because you don't need to make any money to have access to. You don't have to pay any taxes to have access to the free system. So that is already a benefit. But when you look at we have all these social systems that cost us X. So now you're going to go to basic. Maybe it's $200 a person. I don't know. So everybody already gets a $200 benefit if they need it, right?
Sure.
So why don't you just give everybody $1,000 a month, every adult? And as soon as you turn 18, you're on the basic income program. Everybody, rich or poor, it's the same amount of money. So the poor people will spend, all of it, right? But so that money will go back into the economy, which will then boost the economy in that way. If they need to buy a car, they'll have a safety net. If they get credit card debt, they can pay off the credit card debt. Whatever, it's still going to create this. It's still your habits are still your habits. So the hard workers are still going to hard work, and now they're going to have a little safety net that's going to help them go get better educated or go create their business or whatever. And the rich are going to just reinvest it into whatever or hoard it like they do. So that's whatever, they're going to still do what they do, but they get the benefits. So if there's 15 million people that are an adult in our country, or 20 million people that are adults in our country, then there's $20 billion, whatever it is, $1,000 a person. So then you get rid of welfare, you get rid of unemployment, you get rid of all of that.
Yeah.
So that then also goes to help fund it. Then you do a progressive tax that is paid for by the richest of the rich that cover it.
And how do you keep them from trying to move their headquarters to Ireland to avoid taxes?
Let them. Like the idea that people will leave. Listen, we live in. It's bullshit.
I think for the majority of it, but you look at Apple, they did that. They just moved their headquarters to
Great, but they're still there.
Ireland,
they're still
right?
providing jobs, and they're providing jobs in Ireland. Let them.
But they're not paying the taxes in America that they should be.
Let them. Who cares? Like the idea. Like who cares? Like the idea that if you want to live in our country, this is what our country does, and this is how we do it, and this is what makes us great. What you're doing downstream is immediately it may be, it's bad for us. But what you're doing is you're giving everybody a chance to succeed, and you're increasing the pool of people that will create the next Apple, right? And they will have done it in the structure that is created here. So, you may have the greedy people that don't want to give back. They're assholes anyways. So let them be assholes in Ireland.
Yeah.
Let Ireland deal with it. The idea that you're going to lose, even then, you look at in the States where California and their people all moving to tech.
Yeah.
California's just fine, and they're one of the highest tax areas ever, and they're still able to do all that stuff. They're
the fourth largest
economy in the world. So guess what? Let them go. Like the threat that they're going to leave, who cares? Let them go because they're assholes. Like, why do you want to propagate these guys and subsidize them?
Yeah.
Because if they're not paying their fair share, you're subsidizing them. So why not subsidize people that need it, which is the working class people, the people that are in socioeconomic walls. They're prisons because there's systemic things and structural things that have them at a disadvantage. Let's prop them up. Because guess what? We're going to see the next Einstein. We're going to see the next Apple. We're going to see the next genius thing that's going to come from them. Let's try that, right? Because in my mind, we're at end stage capitalism. So why not try something different? And the idea that it's socialist, the idea that it's the devil, and it's all just BS. We've just been told it is. When there's example after example after example of communities and countries that are doing it successfully, and they still have their rich, they still have their companies, there's still people that want to live there. We live in the greatest country in the world, in my estimation. We've got water, we've got clean air, we've got trees, we've got nature. It's beautiful. We have freedom. Like freedom that people take for granted, and they're you look at what's going on in Alberta right now. It's like, oh, the government. It's like it's all BS. Like their oil production has doubled in the last 10, 15 years. So how has that been allowed to happen? There's a pipeline that was built in the last 10 years, but yet they're wanting to go. We're now in an area where they're our current government is needing to diversify because of what's going on in the States. So they're going to build more pipelines and do more things. And they're trying to get, natural gas to Germany now and things like that. And you could argue again, all those little things, like, is it an American owned company? Like whatever, but we're all working on a way to use our energy better and create more wealth for our country by diversifying, which we've been prevented from doing. And in my view, we've been prevented because the U.S. doesn't want us to do it, so we haven't done it, and now they're going to try to punish us for it. And this gets into the sovereignty issue, and I'm wearing my Made in Canada thing. Like sovereignty is
it does say that on the front. What does it say on the back?
It says anti-Canada on the back.
Oh no, I meant the tag. Sorry, I was just being facetious.
It says pro-America on the back.
I'm sure it says Made in Canada too.
Yeah, it's Made in Canada. It's by Kindred Spirits, which is on Vancouver Island.
Oh, awesome!
It's a fantastic T-shirt. I bought it at a market, but what it does is we can have our issues about separation. We can have our issues about this UNDRIP stuff that's happening in BC and property rights and Indigenous rights and all this stuff. We can have all those internal arguments, but when there's an existential threat to our sovereignty, when these issues are up, like the U.S. has invaded Venezuela and removed the leader there. They're now, blocking off Cuba. Yeah. They're bombing Iran. They're talking about Greenland. They're talking about threat. We're in the middle of a negotiation on our free trade. And by all accounts, they're saying you need to do this, this, and this. And you need to do tariffs on the countries that we want to do tariffs in order for you to do business with us. Right. It's like, what are you talking about? That is an attack on our sovereignty. So when we're doing these separation shit and wasting our time talking about it, we are threatening our sovereignty as a country. And that, to me, we can have our disagreements internally. And you know what? People can have, I know in Alberta there was a lot of government sentiment, and also it's now being manipulated because now there's a reason for other actors, whether it be Russian or American, to divide us in order to take what we've got. We have energy, we've got oil, we've got critical minerals, we've got all this stuff, but people want that. So as a country, in my mind, we have to be Canada first, always. And then we can have our disagreements behind closed doors and not give people weapons to use against us. Because if anything we've seen, this is how division is sowed.
I heard today from someone next to this room that maybe Danielle Smith is a plant from the CIA to sow division.
Listen,
right?
It's well known that the U.S. has been messing with us forever, and it goes. The reason why we could only bring oil and gas to Tidewater by rail is to stop us from getting global market rates on our oil and gas and sell it at a discount to the United States. The United States takes our natural gas in a pipeline and goes all the way down to Houston. It then gets liquefied, and then they ship it off around the world and sell it at global market.
Because they're getting it at a steep discount.
We talk about value added. They get the value added. It's our critical minerals, and we're like happy to take seconds. And
we do the same thing with our logs and our
all of that
water.
stuff. All of that stuff.
Just
and
awful.
listen, I'm not talking about being isolationist. I'm talking about making decisions and investments that benefit us. Then use that money, tax money, to diversify our energy grid and get off fossil fuels and do all the stuff that is good for the climate. You can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Yep.
So you don't need to choose one or the other. You can choose both in a way that's constructive. I'm even before COVID, there was funding into this disruption when they were trying to roadblock the LNG pipeline, and this was American funded. Like, there's tons of evidence that all these nonprofits from the States were funding the protesters and this kind of stuff. And you can have legitimate argument for it, like from an environmental standpoint, all that kind of stuff, but have that discussion ourselves, and we can debate and find good ways, clean ways to. Arguably, it's cleaner and safer to do it through a pipeline than it is to do it through rail. You have all these heavy, petroleums and gases flowing on rail, which they end up spilling into the rivers and the streams. Okay, so technology now, you can detect leaks and detect, fractures in pipelines and things like that. So that is kind of like a common sense, but it gets gaslit because it doesn't fit this other narrative. So again, when you talk about division, you can have two separate thoughts at the same time, and also with a goal of doing it better later, but using the resources in order to fund it.
Yep.
And then also, but having your sovereignty to be making those decisions yourself and eliminating that stuff. So all of this stuff is being influenced, heavily influenced, and it's clear by the U.S. ambassador to Canada, who's basically saying supporting Alberta separatism, and when Daniel Smith flies down with Kevin O'Leary to Mar-a-Lago, these people are bad actors.
Yeah.
What are you doing? And then you're on one part of your mouth, you're saying, I wouldn't vote for separatism, but I agree democracy needs, if this is an issue, there's 700,000 people that signed a petition. Dude, you have an obligation to respect, the charter. And from the beginning of time, and Alberta's different than Quebec, and Alberta's different than BC. Alberta signed at the beginning of time, I guess it was, I don't know, it was like the 1700s when the crown came and England, was doing their thing. They signed treaties with the indigenous people.
Predate
the formation of Alberta.
Right?
So they have, treaties 6, 7, 8. They have treaties, so they have rights. And the main thing that's kept through the whole time is the consultation, right? So you have to consult with them before you do anything, and that's the government's obligation. And that is where
consult with the rest of the country as well.
You should, but it's not
Constitution.
You should, but the biggest obligation is with the Indigenous. So in consulting with the Indigenous first, and that goes back. It's right in their treaties. That's the one thing that's carried on through, and the courts recognize that, and that's what they did recently, where they said, no, you have to consult. If you're going to have this discussion, you have to consult with the Indigenous,
right? Because
you can't separate. It's different than Quebec separation, because there aren't treaties that are protecting that. And same with BC, where it live on majority is unceded territory. There's only a few treaties that were done, and I think it's Thomas Douglas that was the guy who first did treaties. But it is also suspect how he did that. So he gave, because he had government. It's all government land. So this is not private property. It's government land that is at dispute. So he said, okay, this is where the reserves are going to be, and you get this area. And guess what? It's nowhere near where there's economic development or prosperity or whatever. So they're permanently creating a structure that doesn't work. Oh, but my buddy who's this investor or whatever gets this land, this
They get
prime
this
land.
port here.
Yeah, and you can run the
Yeah.
port, and that's how you're going to get this industrialization where you can profit from it. And that was established, back in the 1850 in BC, and then when he retired, the treaty stopped. So now there's no treaty land. So it's kind of like, let's go back and just make it right. Like, let's just make it right. Like, this is not, I wasn't there. Yeah, but that's not an argument. The argument is now all of this stuff is structural and built in, and they have a legitimate beef. So it's not resolved. It's never going to be resolved until it is. So, when you look at this UN Declaration of, Indigenous rights, UNDRIP, it's like, the provincial government unanimously, including, the opposition parties, agreed to adopt it without really thinking about, okay, well, how does it happen with private property rights? Like, what is the application of it? And then the BC court ruled that, no, you have to do this. You put it into law. So this is the law of the land. And now there's private property rights that are being questioned because there's an area that had some private property as well as the government land, and also the land that they've already have rights to. And a lot of it has to do with fishing and hunting grounds and things like that.
Yeah.
But we're being gaslit to think, our property, like, this is not going to happen. The Indigenous don't want that to happen either. All they want, they're using it as leverage to get a deal. Like, finally, let's get a deal. Why not? And you had the wisdom or foresight to adopt this, or the naivety, I guess, if you're not, figuring out all these other social things that will happen or legal things that could possibly happen, which they obviously didn't think about because now the provincial government is walking back this. And it's like, dude, you did it. So now lean into it and let's solve it, right? Because it isn't going to go away,
Yeah. The UNDRIP, if Alberta were to adopt it or Canada were to adopt it into law and put the UNDRIP agenda, make it into law, then there's no way anyone could separate at any time.
Well, but that's the way it is now.
Without full consultation and agreement.
Yeah, but that's kind of the way it's the way it should be too.
Exactly.
Like, and there's different treaties in different parts that make that less cumbersome. Like if BC, because we were not well, we have no treaties, so in theory, BC could do it in a way that, would be a little bit less restrictive than Alberta. Alberta can't do it without Indigenous support.
I don't think we could do it now with UNDRIP being implemented in our BC laws.
No, for sure. And exactly.
Right.
So you're exactly right.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, why is that even a question? Why is that even a thing?
It means I'll never get to wave my Cascadia flag, though, man. Sorry, but I mean, for a long time, I was really pro Cascadia. This is like 30 years ago, right? And I think it's a grand idea. It's a natural corridor. Yeah. It's got everything that you want in a country, almost, except it divides up two other countries.
Well, the thing about, if you look at maps over the course of history,
they're always
boundaries
changing.
are changing. So it's naive to think that it can happen.
Yeah,
and
I feel that way a bit about Alberta too. It's like even if 100% of Albertans said they wanted to separate, well, does that make it okay? Does that make it a good thing for them to do? I don't think it does.
No, but, I mean, I agree. I don't think it does either. But do they?
Independently, I think that if BC were to do that,
those people need to move to BC because they could actually stand a better chance doing it in BC,
right?
Or doing it in other provinces that don't have treaties that are already signed by the Crown,
right?
Going back, we live in a society where case law, so that's why UNDRIP, to some degree, it can be applied throughout the country, even though it was adopted in BC, because it creates case law and precedent. And then you go down to what the Crown did. and in different parts, like there's different treaties in different provinces, and that they did. So there's precedent in it, and the duty to consult with the Indigenous is been ingrained in law since the beginning of time, before these beginning in our time, before the provinces were provinces in many cases. So you can't, that's a hurdle you can't overcome. Like, it's got to be addressed. So I'm an advocate of just saying, well, let's just address it. Let's figure out what that looks like. And we don't need to be, racist or prejudiced or demeaning, to.
I don't think it has anything to do with that.
No, it shouldn't. It shouldn't, but it does. And, when I read information, I follow some BC conservative leaders, and they're talking about this UNDRIP, and the racism is just, there's like genocidal comments in there that it's just like
not from the politicians.
Of course not.
Just from the comments.
Exactly. When it's like, back in the day, 100% of the population in these areas was Indigenous. Now in BC, it's 3%. As a country, it's 5%. So you're arguing is, when you hear information that people are like advocating for, ignoring that, it's just so wrong. When it should have been addressed differently at the time. Like, when that your history includes giving, chicken pox blankets, lace blankets to populations to kill them. You can't make decisions knowing that information the way that they're advocating for it. Like, you have to address it.
Right.
Like, that is a part of the history, or the residential schools, or all of that genocidal type stuff. Like, we didn't do it today. Yes, of course.
We
but
are
we're
doing
benefiting.
it today.
But we're
doing
making decisions
still.
that support that without addressing it. It's like you can't say, oh, it happened, or saying, oh, well, maybe it happened, maybe it didn't happen, but now we're going to do this. All of the history, we're a product of history. So everything that we do now is based on what was built before us.
Right.
And without acknowledging that, how do you move forward? Like, the best way to acknowledge it is to accept it. Even when you look at any country, like Germany after World War II, literally built like monuments describing what happened, to the Jews in the concentration camps, and all, and the gypsies and everyone else that was exterminated. And you can't go there without seeing it, knowing it, and they own the history. When you go to Philadelphia, they've done a decent job of addressing the fact that a lot of these inventions that were made, like, Edison and things like that, were actually ideas that were started by people of color, and black people in the time. And so there is that recognition, but in so many other things in the States, it's just like they're just glossing it over, which never gets resolution. So just own it. Like, not everybody was great, not everybody was doing good things, but all of the system we have today was built on that.
And that's why corporations can still poison entire towns and get away with it.
In certain towns.
In certain towns.
And in certain populations can have their voting rights stripped.
Yeah.
And what are we doing?
And some communities can't have good drinking water.
Yeah. Or
we're still doing these horrible things, not just to the Indigenous population anymore. I would argue that corporate capitalism is doing it to all of us now.
Yeah.
And I thank you for this conversation, because it's been really interesting, for one thing. I had to do a lot of research on UNDRIP.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know much about it, and now I'm really familiar with it. I read the entire thing.
Well, and I think that's part, like, how we have these discussions. Just be informed, and ultimately, if you're being told something that demonizes one group, do some research, because the facts are going to be very separate from that, because you're being manipulated. Yeah. And even then, you can have fair arguments on different ends of the spectrum, but get the base knowledge correct so that you can actually have intelligent conversation about it. And not just be going in clickbait and listening to these little bits of, oh, that's bad. Right. Yeah. Is taking away people's private property rights bad? Yes. 100%. We can agree on that. But we can agree on that without demonizing Indigenous people, or without taking away more rights of Indigenous, or without acknowledging the fact that they weren't treated fairly from the beginning of time. So let's try to deal with what we're dealing with today, but try to make it a better system moving forward, so we're not having the same discussion in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years and then seeing the Indigenous population decrease to 1%. You know,
Right.
like why is that a thing? It shouldn't be a thing. Or overrepresented in the prison population, or overrepresented, you know, in welfare lines,
And
or
underrepresented in policy decision
yeah,
making.
or in the government.
Yeah.
You know, like, why? I mean, look at Wab Kinew, who's Indigenous, and he's incredible, and he speaks plainly and addresses this stuff. And he confronted Daniel Smith, you know, yesterday about the untruths. And it's about framing things wrong. Like, to say that this is the separatist thing is giving people, improving democracy because these are people. It's not about that. You're abdicating your responsibility to the Constitution, which clearly states, especially in your province, that you have to have consultation with Indigenous. You just do, because they have the treaty rights to the land and resources, their hunting grounds, that predates the province.
Right.
So if you want to go separate, go lease some land somewhere and then create your own little government, I guess, I guess, because you don't have the right to do it in that province. So why are we wasting our time? Because the courts don't agree with you. You know, history doesn't agree with you. The majority of Alberta doesn't agree with you.
Yeah.
The entire country doesn't agree with you. And we've bent over backwards to facilitate as best we could with, you know, now that the U.S., you know, we're able to kind of get some of those resources to Tidewater, that, you know, even though a lot of them are American owned companies, you know, so it's like, come on, guys, what are we doing? Like, let's just talk real, but let's understand and put it in the historical context. People need to read history books. They just do, because it's actually going to decrease your blood pressure. It's going to bring some common sense to the discussion. And we're actually going to be able to have a debate about what the right way forward is. That's based on facts, not based on feelings. Facts don't care about your feelings, you know, which is the way we get through this, in my opinion.
Yeah, feelings.
Look how we've gone way over. We're gonna get in trouble.
Yeah, okay. Feelings. Well, I feel good about it.
I feel good, but the facts don't care.
But my feelings don't really count.
No,
I mean, generally speaking, I don't think any of our individual feelings count when it comes to policy making, because where do you draw the line at what I feel and then you feel and Vivian feels, and like we all feel differently about things. So I'm happy with my feelings, and I don't care what other people think about them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But, you know, we are also taking steps to be informed.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So that we can actually have an opinion that's based on facts, because it does make a difference. And the other thing, which I'll say in closing about anything, is just, you can be entrenched in your position, but just be open to the idea that you're basing it on stuff that is probably maybe not true, or be willing to change your position on new information. Yeah. Like, this is one of the most adaptable things in entrepreneurship, is, you know, not being set in a path, being open to different ideas, and being willing to change your position. And I will argue till like almost breathless about an opinion if I feel strong enough about it. The second someone says one or two words or a sentence that has me thinking, well, maybe I'm wrong, I will quickly go and say, hey, let me look at that.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll change my position. I will argue, and it's happened to me throughout my entire career, where I've gone down one road and I was just wrong. It was wrong for my business. It was wrong theory. It was wrong for whatever reason. And all it took is 2 or 3 or 4 different conversations, or one different conversation, that I'm like, oh, I didn't consider that. Let me consider that. And then it forms your opinion, and you get a better result, right? And this is the idea, is like, you can have 2 different contrary opinions, but then new information or shared information or collaborative information, or actually listening versus talking, can influence your position. That makes it better outcome.
Absolutely.
Right? So let's go for better outcomes, but, you know, let's also start with a baseline of truths, you know, and then, you know, the opinions of it and the different ways to get there, but just being open to the idea that you're wrong, you know.
And don't take it personally when you're wrong.
Don't take it personally.
And don't make your opinions your
Yeah,
or
and
your
to have
position, your personality, or
100%.
your core. Like,
And you can have passionate
Don't.
disagreements on things. You know, I have a friend that I go for lunch with once a month, and he's gone left to right. And I'm like, huh. He's talking to me about things. I'm just like, dude, you're just like gaslit. You know, and then all of a sudden something will change or something will come out. I'm like, oh, let me look into this a little bit more. And it's like, you know what? You have a right. I get where you're coming from now. And I'll keep an eye on that sort of perspective. So it's enlightened me. Even that we're vehemently disagreeing on a bunch of things, we're actually through discussion and through dialogue that is not, you know, we hug each other at the end of it,
Yeah.
but we're vehemently debating, and which is really enjoyable. It's kind of like our conversations. It's very enjoyable. And we come at it from totally different angles, but we're actually, you know, merging our ideas by that discussion. So we're making
We're
two radical
creating-
concepts better.
We're creating a baby together there, Calen.
A baby of ideas, man.
A baby idea. It
Baby
will grow up to be an all grown up idea.
No, it'll grow up to be like annoying and not doing dishes, not
And
cleaning the room,
Always borrowing my car.
always borrowing a car, wanting money. You know, that's yeah.
well,
that's funny. That's a good conclusion.
I think so.
Baby of ideas. Let's grow babies of ideas
and nurture them.
Nurture them.
Nurture them with truth and love.
and love.
Whatever truth is.
Praise be.
Oh man. All right. Well, Calen, I'm gonna get out of here and probably go home and go to bed.
Exhausting.
I'm tired.
Go do
today.
it. Get a nap. I love it.
I'm going to. All right. You have a great day and be really nice to everyone you see.
Be real kind.
I will.
Cheers, Sam.
Bye.
Bread and Butter Collective's membership includes the following local businesses: 2% Jazz, Bunny's Kitchen, Buzz Coffee House, Eagle-Ite, Big Wheel Burger, Blue Mountain Solutions, Bodega Tapas Wine Bar, Eva Schnitzel House, Farmsgate Foods and Catering, Victoria Chocolate and Company, Drum Roaster Coffee, Habit Coffee, Foo Asian Street Food, the Culinary Arts Program at Camosun, Cafe Fantastico, Fall Epi, Harold Street Brewworks, Hey Happy, House of Botang, Nikkei Ramen Ya, Jenny Marie's Cracker Company, La Pasta, La Rue Patisserie, Mocha House, Part and Parcel, Poco a Pinto Bar, Pizzeria Prima Strada, Keating Pizza, Roast, Table 9 Consulting, Sherwood Cafe and Bar, Sweets by Selena, The Collective Wine Bar and Kitchen, The Drake, Tapa Bar, The Nimble Bar Company, Ruth and Dean, The Whole Beast, The Wienery, Spoon's Diner, Truffles-inspired catering, and Zambries.
To hear more from the Bread and Butter Collective, go to checknews.ca/podcasts on Check Plus, or find us on your favorite podcasting platform.